Hi, so my name is Maxie Glamour, and I am the executive director and founder of Qu'art St. Louis. We are a St. Louis-based organization focused on intersectional queer liberation. Today, we are celebrating Black Love Day, and we're going to be joined with amazing panelists. And so today we're going to be looking at masculinity. And masculinity is a set of attributes, behaviors, and roles. And masculinity is socially constructed and distinct from the definition of the biological male sex, as people of all sexes and genders can occupy spaces of masculinity. Today we're going to look at the nuances of gender and masculinity as it pertains to the Black persona. So I am joined with these amazing panelists. We have Magic Dyke, David Wraith, J. Marie Hill, Rasheen Aldridge, and Tichara Masimba. I'm so excited to have all of you joining me on this cold Saturday as we celebrate Black Love Day. Now that people know that your names, I know that personally you all show up in different communities trying to make them better. Can you describe that you do for the viewers at home that might not be familiar with you? And let's start with Magic Dyke.
So my name is Magic. I am a performance artist, a drag king specifically, life coach, content creator. And when I'm not creating art, I'm a behavior technician, which basically fancy word for saying that I work with kids on the autism spectrum.
Thank you, Magic. And David?
I'm David Wraith. I'm a community health worker and sex educator. My day job is sexually transmitted infection testing and prevention. And my night gig is being co-founder of Sex Positive St. Louis, which is a sexual education and socialization group for adults.
Thank you. All right, Tichara?
Right, my name is Tichara Masimba, and just to say out front, I'm a candidate running for alderperson in the city, Ward 21, but I'm an activist. I've been an activist for years now, and I've been fighting to ensure that the Black community is able to have power over our own lives, you know? So we have a million contradictions in our community, very serious contradictions. I'm glad to be here today to talk about this very serious contradiction that we have on this question. And, I fight to ensure that we have the capacity to control our lives, because if we don't control our lives, we don't have freedom and power over our own lives. We never, ever, ever will be able to determine how it is that we are able to live. So that's what I've been doing. And I've been creating this incredible program called the Black Power Blueprint, building economic development right here in North City, St. Louis.
Thank you. And last but not least, Rasheen.
Hey everybody, my name is Rasheen. I'm a state representative of the 78th district. Before I was a state rep, I was a community activist involved with the Fight for 15. I was also involved in Ferguson. I believe it's about us as Black people making sure that things are equitable and not just equal, no matter what field we're in. We all specialize in our own little field, but it's about making sure that we all work in those fields to make it fair for people like us that are on this call. So I appreciate, Maxie putting together, like Masimba said, this is an important conversation, especially in the Black community. A lot of stereotypes and norms that has been going on for too long. There's one thing just to be uneducated about it, and then it's another thing to just be ignorant and don't want to learn. So I appreciate everybody that's on here. I think we all look at this issue differently. It can educate each other, but also really get the message out in our community.
Oh, that was amazing. I'm so thankful that all of you are here. One of our panelists, Bruce Franks, is not able to be here because, being a Black liberation movement leader, sometimes we get targeted by people that want to stop Black liberation, and he is fighting some battles in Arizona. So much love to you, Bruce. We love you, respect you. We are there. And last, we got J. Marie.
Hey there. So I know I was kind of busy, and it wasn't for sure I was going to be on here, so I'm really grateful to have had it work out to join y'all, and really honored to be here with everybody. It's also my partner's birthday, so masculinity sometimes means, balancing things, just like the way that our Black women, Black femmes, and folks do all the time. So I won't be able to be here the whole time, but I am honored. My name is J. Marie. J. Marie is Holy is my artist name, and putting more and more music out that way, so we'll talk a little bit about that later. And I definitely use my music and my art and my activism all in the same way to kind of push into the new world that we deserve. And I know that as somebody who is perceived as a masculine person, and just, it's the short hair, it's the voice, things that I can control a little bit, I guess, my haircut, but my voice is the way it is, right? And my body is shaped the way it is. And so I've had to learn a lot about masculinity, and I look forward to sharing some of those learnings today. The work that I do is at the intersections of gender, blackness, and art, basically. So I'm also doing a lot of work around bodies. So sex work and pleasure, and our ability to be honest about what makes us feel pleasure is a big part of masculinity, and the healing that we need to do is really at that intersection. So looking forward to talking with everybody today. My pronouns are they, them. Holy.
Ooh, ooh. Yeah, yes. So I'm so excited. This is great. And as we go through these topics and go through these questions, feel free to jump in as you feel fit. Some people are going to have more to say about certain things, and some people are going to feel like they want to follow the lead about what other people say. And so all of you are here for a particular reason. All of you contribute in different ways. So I'm so thankful for all of you to be here. One topic that we have been introduced, like words that have been introduced recently to communities, is toxic masculinity. And a lot of people define masculinity as itself as being toxic, but we're here to understand that not all masculinity is toxic. So can we kind of describe for you, each of you, your particular definition of toxic masculinity, what it looks like to you?
For me, toxic masculinity is any negative or destructive behavior that we as a patriarchal society tolerate or even encourage when they're done by men or people who are masculine of center in the name of reinforcing traditional or stereotypical gender roles.
I would say that toxic masculinity is when masculinity doesn't take responsibility for itself and the privileges that patriarchy confers upon bodies who are gifted and or blessed and or cursed with the weight of the responsibility to be masculine or to be perceived as masculine. And that means that, it can be that you are doing something that you didn't mean to do, but it really is about how you kind of constantly avoid. Toxic masculinity is the avoidance of responsibility, the avoidance of naming, the avoidance of responsibility and accountability, given that we are in the world, all of us in the same world, and masculine folks, patriarchy kind of sets us up to be believed more. So if we're not taking responsibility and actively kind of undermining where that trust comes from so that we can all have more of that trust, then that's toxic masculinity is what results and or what even perpetuates that further. It also may not be a question for everybody, so I think it's cool if a couple people answer their questions, and we can. There's so much richness on this panel. I have no doubt that we're gonna get into it once it's once we warm up. I think those are some good starts, and I would love to know if there's people watching, if they have stuff, they can drop them in the chat, things like that.
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, I agree with what's been said. I think that when you get down to it, it's a masculinity that keeps us on the plantation. We live in a social system that requires exploitation and oppression of Black and other indigenous people. And masculinity, what we call toxic masculinity, is when we learn to reproduce the goals of that system, which is designed to exploit and oppress us. And so we take that force, that violence that we learn from the system, and we impose it on each other, oftentimes. And gender, sexuality, et cetera, becomes an excuse for us to reproduce what the system has produced in us. And so I just think that it's important to be able to say that, and to say that the way that we deal with toxic masculinity and these other forms of reproducing the oppression that we face is to get off the plantation. We cannot solve these contradictions as long as we are not a free people and we don't control our destiny in daily lives.
My fault, my mute button was messed up a little bit, but I'll say for me, it's about, in a way, using the system to continue to oppress people, right? Believing that masculinity has to be this, right? And I think when we fall into the norms or the stereotypes are like, a boy will be a boy, and saying certain things that, oh, a man has to act this way, right? And that's not true, right? Men can be feminine. And people that identify as however they identify can be masculine. There is beauty in masculinity, but when you get to a point where we continue, I think, like I said earlier, we continue to, especially in the Black community, carry these norms and stereotypes that this is the perception of what masculinity looks like. Especially for a Black man, it has to look this way, right? And a woman can't be masculine. So I think is carrying out stereotypes and norms that aren't really norms, as we done found out. It's just bad habits that has been carried on for a long time.
Well, I'm gonna say, I guess I'm the last one. Basically, y'all have summed it up in a very poetic way. Like, I feel like there's so many layers of what is considered toxic, but it's essentially, it's rooted in the same things that everyone here touched on. It's like, for me, it's like the suppression of emotions considered soft, and the amplification of things such as like ego, pride, like the things that, you know, we choose to give to like masculine people just by them existing. So it's like suppressing one thing and then amplifying the things that put you more in power and continue to keep you at a place of power is what I consider to be toxic masculinity. It's whatever is causing harm to the people around you and the people who are, you know, not masculine. So that's my perception.
Thank you all. I think really one term that just stuck to my head is like toxic masculinity is what keeps us on that plantation. You know, I'm gonna repeat that over and over. Like that was thank you for that zinger there. You know, when we look at physical abuse on Black femmes, quite often it's perpetuated by Black and brown masked humans. And we all have been complicit in perpetuating both physical and or emotional harm on others. And so knowing that, how can we identify our own complicities in perpetuating toxic masculinity? And how can we combat this?
So I'll go. I remember as a child and growing up, literally looking at other males and learning to imitate them. You know, we often don't recall that kind of thing, but I remember it. And I remember, learning to be aggressive toward women. And then we always had the older guys who would beat up the young kids to teach you to learn to be tough. You know, so that was a part of the the training that we receive, but it's a form of violence that we extend toward each other that we call horizontal violence. It happens within the group, but it's a form of violence that we learn as a consequence of the violence that comes from above or from the system. So I don't know how successful you or anybody else would say I am in combating this, but I think for me, I've been part of organization. I've been part of struggle. We've been always attempted to solve the problems of what it is Black people need to do to be free. And through fighting to solve those problems, we've been able to resolve these kinds of contradictions. And we led on these kinds of questions in my organization before many of us, most of us, maybe all of us here were born. You know, we were on the right side of these kinds of questions, you know, but we are trying to solve the problems of what it is that Black people and other oppressed people need to be free. Need to do to be free.
I'll jump in. So an example that I use is, so I actually have I won't say they name, but I have a family member that very close cousin grew up with that turned out to be LGBTQI plus, right? But at a young age, you know, that person played with, you know, baby dolls and watch more things like Powerpuff Girls, and I would, you know, make fun of my own cousin because, you know, as a kid, you grow up that, oh, we have to have a football, right? We got to play with a football, or, you know, the baby dolls and stuff and that. It's for females, it's for girls. So if you are to look at anything like that, you got sugar in your tinker, it's funny, right? So, I mean, now that I'm, you know, much older and learn that people, you know, they got the right to identify with however they identify and got the right to love who they want to love. But I wasn't raised like that, right? I was raised the stereotype of a male is, you know, tough and manly, and, you know, females, you know, cooking, not necessarily like old school, but just these ideas of what boys and girls would be, right? And if you dip in between or you go across and you do anything feminine, because being a boy, you shouldn't be feminine, right? Then that was a problem. And, I learned from it now, but, looking back at it, that was something that due to my upraising, and I know many other people upraising, that wrong behavior is being taught. And I know I would never teach my kids or anybody I know that's close to me that same behavior that I seen in my community.
I would say that to the degree to which you lack privilege in this society probably corresponds with the amount of trauma that you endure growing up in the society. And if we don't examine and process and heal that trauma, we are going to enact it on other people, often the people closest to us, often people that have less privilege than we do. So when I was growing up, I was picked on, I was bullied, I was abused by people sort of in the name of, making me tougher and making me more of a man. And I turned around and repeated those behaviors on other people, women, queer folks, men that were not, as tough or as masculine as me. And I think that we have to examine ourselves and what we've been through, and we have to process that and heal it, or we're going to repeat that cycle and it's never going to end.
The thing that I'll add to this is that, like, more and more, a lot of our movements and places like this where we have access to these kinds of words, these kinds of conversations, we, I think, are very internally focused, and we can kind of say all the right words, but we're not necessarily bringing people in to also do the work with us, right? Whether that's internal work or organizing in the community. And so, my hope is that even as we kind of go in circles about the terminology, right, and the different kind of vocabularies, my hope is that everything that we say, and I get this from my Black lesbian feminist elders who taught me Combahee River Collective, Demita Frazier. I was just on a panel or watching a panel with her the other day. One of the authors of the Combahee River Collective, and it matters to me that she's just a message away, a phone call away, right? But because I heard from them and because I've read them, I want us to make sure that we're not, elevating the need to read or to say the words over the actual need to do the work. And I think when it comes to bringing people in, there's a reality that sometimes we cut people off when they don't get it right, to the point where we actually never are going to get it right because we're not actually invested in actually working with the messiness, And so as a queer, Black, trans person who didn't necessarily choose, I don't feel so that I chose to take on the trans label, and that I was headed towards the destination, home plate, give me trans, I'm just out here looking cute, y'all see it, and what it means is that I have to be prepared, right, for who I am in community with and for the mess that probably comes with them, right? And so that might mean that yes, I love and I'm drawn to queer folks, Black women, but do they feel safe around me, right? And do I do the work to make sure that if they tell me they don't, that I've listened, right? Especially if, as a person who has from a young age sort of been shielded maybe from abuse or some of these things that people associate with Black women, not only does that not necessarily mean that I'm not a Black woman, right? But it does mean that there are things in my body that I do not know. I don't have those memories. I don't have those scars, right? And so for me to actually take those scars seriously is for me what I think the work of masculinity is just because you don't have it or just because you don't want it or think it, feel it, need it, doesn't mean that it's not real. It doesn't mean that somebody's emotions about it are to be questioned, And so people say believe Black women or trust Black women, and it's we often those are lingo. Those are things that are lingo. And I say that for me because I don't feel it as if we don't, people don't mean that they're not trying their hardest. People are, right? But the reality is when we don't have it in our bodies or we don't identify the places in our bodies where we squished it down, it becomes something that we are actually literally unable to hear other people when they say it and take them seriously. So the hashtag is really about our work and less about doing, something else over there. And so when it comes to identifying our own complicities, that's for me the roadmap is am I listening to the Black women around me, whether they say they're having a good time? Am I joining in that with them? Am I automatically invited? Not because it's for all genders and everything, but because they feel present. They feel like nothing is going to be compromised when I come around. That's for me the standard. And if that's not happening, then either my movement focuses need to change or my internal focuses need to change. Probably both. Right? But essentially it has to be inner work, and we can't just say it's the hashtag. We can't just say it's about finding other people, but we do have to make sure that we're not complicit when we do actually find those people. And if we toss them aside, who's going to do that work?
So last but not least, when it comes to my perspective, my point of view as someone who is AFAB, assigned female at birth, being in community with like butch folks, the dykes, and the masculine of center women. It's the parallels are pretty much, you know, the parallels are there when it comes to us enacting these like harmful traits, or like as far as like causing violence and doing these things that are masculine or that align with masculinity in general. So it's like we're not exempt from that just because we are AFAB folks. So it's like when we adopt these gender roles and play out the like heteronormative ideals of what is supposed to be, you know, we're supposed to be the tough, masculine, violent, whatever the case is, power, control, all the things that we like align ourselves with for the sake of like progressing our own individual, you know, ways of like, you know, just gaining power, staying in power. It's like, for me personally, when I was in my young baby days, I had to learn the hard way that like you cannot go around personifying this idea of masculinity that is causing harm to other people, especially people like in relationships, when people were like expecting me to be one way, like they're saying, oh, you're too soft. So I was like, okay, cool. So I'll become harder, you know, I'll learn how to be more masculine for the sake of fitting this heteronormative ideal. It's like, okay, you want me to be the butch lesbian? Who's the man in the relationship? I guess that's me because of how I look, the body that I have, and the ways that people perceive me. So it's like I had to do a lot of inner work. So kind of like going off of what J. Marie said, I had to unlearn a lot of behaviors and a lot of traits that were toxic as fuck. And I don't know if you can curse here, but it was just really toxic. And it was the inner work is not a pretty process. Like it's sitting with yourself in the mirror and realizing that like I am the one causing these harmful behaviors and holding yourself accountable. Like it's not easy to be like, I'm the bad guy. Like this is me. Like I'm the bad guy in the situation and I have to do better because now that I know better, I can't just not, you know, do something to elevate or like essentially it's like that. If you know better, do better. And I had to do a lot of inner work. And the way that I've, you know, kind of like made peace with my past is realizing that like everything that I learned was not my fault, but it was like it was up to me to unlearn the shit that no longer aligned with who I wanted to be in the future and who I wanted to be in community. And it's like once I expect better for myself, I expect the same from like my masculine center friends. It's like we're not gonna sit here and objectify like femmes together. We're not gonna sit here and talk about our body counts or like just the little things that start this like cycle of like, you know, toxic traits. It's like it starts with like little things where you're like, you know, you look at a woman walking by or a femme walking by and you make comments and then you and your bros, you know, laugh it up, kiki, whatever. And then it continues to like, okay, now that we are dehumanizing people in our community, it turns into violence later on down the road. So it's like catching that in the beginning stages and holding myself accountable when I do it. Cause it's like, even till this day, I'm not perfect. Like I still have traits that are toxic, like just by existing as a human being. It's like, I still have things that I'm always working on. So it's like realizing that the work never stops. The inner work never stops. We don't reach a place of like, now we are healthy masculine folks, you know, we must teach everyone else how to do the thing. It's like, we're always unlearning together and we're always growing. So it's like, for me, how I combat it is just doing the inner work and expecting more from the people around me. Like if my friends are doing something, I can call them out because we're in community. So I feel like I have the responsibility to just start home before I start preaching to the choir. I have to like start right here in my own house, in my own family, in my own community, in my own, you know, platforms. So essentially just lots of inner work. The linear process is like doesn't exist. So it's like it's ugly. We make mistakes, we fall, we wake up, do better the next day. And that's, you know, that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, you know, as someone that is, you know, assigned male at birth and a trans, non-binary, gender fluid person, I really like, I get to occupy both spaces at times. You know, some days I'm like super femme and some days I'm like super masculine, want to like do that. And I've understood that how I have been complicit in this, like be it on Grindr and like devaluing femme gay people or like being out in the world and like being with like the bros and wanting to fit in with them and like perpetuating like misogyny just so I can like exist in those circles. And I think that a lot of times we exclude like femme gay people and femme like AMAP people from the conversation of being complicit and perpetuating like toxic masculinity, because it this perpetuation can be, it doesn't matter what gender you are. You can read online of like, I see tweets and it's like, I'll never go out with a nigga that gets dessert because that shit's gay. And it's like, wait a minute. Do you get that, like, do you get what you're perpetuating there? And like, as I've grown older and more sure of myself, I'll jump on that tweet. I'll be like, listen here, friend, listen here, person I don't even know. We need to like combat that. And sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. A lot of times we look at masculinity and we are degrading of it at times because we have been subjected to the toxicity of it. But there are examples of great positive masculinity. And I just kind of want you all to describe what that means to you. What is healthy masculinity and how does it show up in your life? And do you have any good examples?
I'll start. Unfortunately, I don't have real life examples of healthy masculinity in my own life. And it's like, when I saw this question, I had to think real hard. I was like, who can I like pinpoint and like be like, this is someone that I consider to have like these traits. And the way that I define healthy masculinity is like someone, a masculine person who is able to value the voices of others, who is able to amplify voices of others without having any sort of like ego or, waiting for their claps or cookies at the end of like, I did the right thing. So it's like, there is a lot of, like, I think it's because I occupy, well, now that we're in quarantine, I don't occupy a lot of spaces. So it's like all my friends are like on Netflix. So it's like, I'll start just by saying I don't have examples of healthy masculinity, but this question has led me to start seeking that out. And it was something that was very, very thought provoking, and it just put that on my radar.
I would say I have several examples of healthy masculinity in my life. Being in a lot of activist spaces, I meet a lot of men who are, I would say, aspiring allies. I always like to say aspiring because I don't think I think allyship is a journey, it's not a destination. But people who are aspiring allies to, the queer community, the trans community, the feminist community, and guys who are doing the work. And none of us are perfect, but I feel like I've been very fortunate to have men around me who hold me accountable, hold themselves accountable, and who don't, lash out when I hold them accountable. And to me, what it looks like is just, you know, being aware of your privilege. I know it sounds cliche, but being aware of your privilege and checking the amount of space that you take up. Are you talking over queer folks, trans folks, women? Are you talking over men who you may see as not as quote unquote masculine as you? And particularly, are you talking over them on issues that affect them more than they affect you? And just, not centering your experience as a masculine person, as a heterosexual man, particularly when there are people who are, you know, women, queer, trans, non-binary, etc., who have valuable experiences in that area that are different from yours, and not discounting them because they're not your experience, because your experience is filtered through your privilege, and it takes effort to be aware of that.
Yeah, I got to piggyback off David. I'll say it's kind of unfortunate. I don't really feel like the most positive, I guess, of seeing an example of like good masculinity has been like through the movement. The movement and I think we all are, depending on where you are on the stage, one thing that a lot of people have said, like we all are learning, right? All learning to check our own selves is like we told our white allies, like, white privilege, you need to educate yourself. At the same time, we got to look in the mirror on things that, took place in the movement when we seen females leading the way and people were like, oh, wait, no, that can't be, right? And people had to check and say, why is that, right? Why is it that it has to be a male? Why is it that, the way that the aggression was being put out there by males to females in the movement, like that's not okay. And it took really for that movement, and it's been a continuous work over the. I mean, we started some at 14, but it's still, I think, a learning process, and it's still moments that individuals got to check themselves. But for me, it's been the movement where I've seen positive people educate and inform me on certain terms, right? Or like how I was being too masculine, or how I was devaluing people in a way that I didn't even know I was doing it. Just being who I am, even in a goofy way, thinking that it's funny, but it's very harmful. The things that you said, the way that you can move to people that you love and don't even know that you're harming them. But those small toxic things can, ultimately grow into larger things. So it was really the movement for me to really be a space where comfortable to feel ignorant to some of the things, but also know when somebody checked me, when my family checked me, held me accountable, it like a sting, but it's coming out of a place of love, right? And you got to take that, because being mad about it is you're not listening. That's the whole point of listening, is like really opening up like your heart to love. And it's like, I really want to learn this. So.
All right. Yeah, I want to take a stab at that as well. There's a short passage I want to read from the 2017 political report of my organization, the African People's Socialist Party. And it says that we condemn the morality and relations that permit European imperialist corporations, countries, and neo-colonial thugs to exploit our people's life and resources in Africa, to flaunt laws protecting sovereignty, the environment, and customs with impunity, while attacking people and the African working class based on sexual orientation or relations between same gender loving individuals. The liberated Africa worker state will only oppress the imperialists and the neo-colonialists who have surrendered our future. We will call on the entire African working class and all African patriots to rise up against all who would divide the nation and the working class based on the false contradictions of sexual identity, ethnic identity, and regional and religious differences. And it goes on to really envision what a new world could look like. And I think that how we know that, we are masculinity, we don't have this toxic masculinity or whatever, is the ability for us to get out of the way, males to get out of the way and let African women and same gender loving people lead and have a serious say-so, equal or more say-so in the way that the new world will look. Because it's only when we can create a new world that we will have the ability to really say how it is that our societies turn out. We can't do it as long as we own a plantation. We're gonna have this contradiction forever. So we gotta build a new world. We gotta take control of our resources, and we got to put power in the hands of the most suppressed sectors of society.
I guess for me, when I look at that, I know it's so cheesy, and I know neoliberalism sucks, but sometimes I look at Barack Obama and I do think that sometimes Barack Obama, I'm not saying I have all of his policies or everything or the tea, but what I am saying is sometimes he does emulate, healthy masculinity. And even though he ain't black, he still emulates positive healthy masculinity. And that's Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers was that man, he did that. And so, I think the point of this thing is how can it's a lot of times white men are permitted to be healthy masculine. A lot of times it's white people that get to be in that role of being progressive. And so when we think about liberation, we want to make sure that Black liberation is empowered and Black liberation is healthy. And I know, Jay Marie, you got to go really quickly. So, let's just look at this question, this next one, and then we have a little video from you that we want you to share about a little music. So I would like to ask, how can masculinity show up for intersectional feminism?
Yeah, I mean, I can tackle that, and I wish I could stay for the whole time to really hear the richness of what y'all will cover. I have no doubt. But I actually want to combine kind of the last question and this one, right? So when I think about how to show up for folks, right? Especially if those folks who have been calling us out, calling masculine folks to the forefront, right? In a way that's saying, show us that you want to get it right. Sometimes it comes out as y'all ain't shit. But what they also mean when they say that, right, is like, show me that you want to get it right. Because I want, nobody's out here like waking up, like, how can I make sure everybody knows they're getting it wrong every single day? Like, people really want us, they want us to show up, right? And so when I think about a healthy example, I think about Darnell Moore, who is a black, gay, he's been a writer, he's got a podcast right now. Like, he has been at the forefront, I think, of talking. He's a black gay man, and he's also like a media kind of connoisseur at this point. He knows how to move media and messaging such that we can really tackle those questions. I think about Merv Marcano, who is a strategist for the Movement for Black Lives, from the Me Too movement. He is not necessarily a black woman, right? And these folks are not black women, but they are in deep, deep relationship. They show up, they take care of, they celebrate birthdays, right? Like, are you going to people's houses? Are you who they call when they are going through something? I think those are the examples of both those people that I see doing that already, and these are the people who I see showing up for intersectional feminism, right? They're looking at, not only do I believe you in the Me Too movement, but I want to know, how can we broaden this work? I think if those folks are essentially the Bayard Rustin of this time. There are people saying, maybe we're not talking about MLK's work. He's not necessarily flanking black men alone, but the work, it really is, how can we flank movements, entire groups of people, millions of people at once, right? Sometimes I don't think we're even asking the right questions. I applaud Rasheen, right? Showing up, stepping up to be a representative. It's hard to be, making that little bit of money and still kind of getting all this flack from the community, right? So I think showing up to these conversations and being very present, and for me, in terms of like my work and the video that we'll show, my video is, I call it a video diary, because it really is me showing some of those inner moments of what that love looks like, and how I'm showing folks kind of the nuances of what it's like to live at this intersection of both gender, blackness, race, parenting, being an auntie. Like, is there room for my auntiness and my transness? Absolutely, because I say so. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's a holy space, and I'm going to hold and show as much of it as possible, because there aren't enough examples of that. So I definitely look forward to showing this, and I hope y'all enjoy it. And I wish I could stay for the rest, but thank you for letting me be here for this bit of time.
Yeah, thank you for being here. It's been a joy. All right. And you want to cue up the song?
I can, sure. So, as I said, my name is Jay Maurice Holy. When I'm making music, it's my name all the time. You know what I'm saying? It's news to some of y'all, but now you can add it to what you know about me. I do a lot of things. So yeah, this song is called Love Is. It's off my upcoming project that will be out this year. It's called 5/3 More Than Magic, because like I said, what's beyond the black girl magic, what's beyond the black boy joy? Me, apparently. And so, but the love is what's beyond that, the showing up for people, and the, we're not 3/5, we're actually 5/3 the whole time, right? So that's the vibe, and I hope you get that energy from this love that I think seeps through the track, and that you enjoy, the very intimate look at me and my friends and my family members, and me sharing that with the world.
I know
Wow, this conversation is so amazing. Like really, I feel it in my soul. Don't know if I believe in souls, but if I did, it would be vibrant and like just really the things that we're touching on. I am literally getting emotional. A couple times I had to fight back some tears, and I know we haven't even gotten into the gritty of it. So I can't cry because I got a lot of makeup on, and this is expensive. Just if you guys want to get a little better look at it, it's expensive.
A close up to see everything.
I spend my time on it. But I just want to again thank again J. Marie Hill for showing up. J. Marie is holy. They really provided some great insight. That brings us to this next question. As we're getting into this, we're gonna get into the gritty. So when you look at homophobia and transphobia, they're very common in the country. And unfortunately, they're very common in the Black community as well. Within older communities, this is exponentially more prevalent. How can we, as people that occupy masculine space, combat this within the Black community?
Yeah, I'll just say briefly that I think this is an important question, and we see a different form. You said, older community, older people, older community. I think we see this same kind of thing in a different form. Where we see some people say, well, that ain't African, or that ain't who we are. That's something we learned from the white man. And what you see is that tradition can be reactionary, even if we assume that that's true. Tradition, which may have been okay in one setting, can be reactionary, and the fact is we have to change because the conditions require us to change, if for no other reason. And so we cannot be divided along these false kinds of contradictions, these false division lines that keep us oppressed. We just cannot imitate that for the future. And so we have to push back against that. And we have to be willing to be bold and stand out and be the first people, over the hill with the bow and arrow. We might get the shots first, but we have to be willing to lead on these questions. And there's no better way to do it than through organization and through actual struggle. So that's the best answer I can have. I have.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it quick. I think we gotta hold people accountable. We gotta check individuals and let them know, especially in the Black community. And we know, I think my generation and ones on this call, we kind of on the same generations, right? But our generation is a lot better compared to the generation before us when it comes to homophobia, right? So we gotta, no matter what space you're in, we have um, individuals have family members, friends that can love who they want to love. And for us, I think in the Black community, we have looked at that as a bad thing, and we gotta check it, and we gotta let folks know they got the right to love who they want to, no matter what spaces you're in. If that conversation is happening at the barbecue, the cookout in a harmful way, uh, we can't be silent on it, because if you're silent and you can place it on the issues, they'll continue to happen. It may be uncomfortable, check your uncle who's super cool, but don't know how his toxic ways is hurting people, and continue in a society or continue a thought that you push down to someone else. But that needs to be checked, that no matter, any individual can love who they love, period. And no one has the right to judge who they want to love.
I would say that for me as a heterosexual cisgender male and other people like me, it's really on us who, if we consider ourselves to be allies and accomplices, to bring people in our community along with us from a place of love. It's easier for me as someone with a lot of privilege to be listened to by people who would dismiss out of hand someone who identified as gay or someone who identified as trans. I used to be very involved with before my life as a sex educator, I was very involved with the church, and in a liberal church, but still very homophobic and very transphobic. And I had a platform to where I could say to people, look, what you said in the prayer meeting about trans people, that's not cool. Your homophobic attitudes are not cool. And because I am not personally, they're not attacking me. They're attacking people that I love and care about, but I'm not triggered by those things in the same way that I might be if I were gay or transgender. So it's easier for me to, from a place of love, talk to these people and try to bring them along. And just from being friends with me, a lot of these people from my church were exposed to gay and transgender people that they otherwise wouldn't have met, and they had to reassess their stereotypes. So it's very easy to, cancel people and say, oh, you're homophobic, I don't want to deal with you, and I understand that. But for those of us who have, privilege, I feel like we do have a responsibility not just to cancel people who we love and who we think have potential, but to, from a place of love, try to change their attitudes. And it's not going to happen in a single conversation, but I've seen it happen over and over again.
So my answer to this is from the point of view of a 26-year-old African immigrant. When it comes to breaking like generational cycles and things that are so ingrained in our culture that it's like sometimes it feels like it's like you versus an entire fucking collection of people. It's like it's hard. Like it's easier said than done when it's like when you're the one that's like the voice for what feels like you're like the appointed representative for like the LGBTQIA plus community. It's like they're looking at you like, so are you gonna teach us or and for some of them they don't even want to learn. So it's like when it comes to me being someone who is young and culturally it's like going against the elders, going against people who are older than you, it's really, really frowned upon, especially when it's like against things that are so like my whole existence is taboo. Like in my culture, in my village, it is taboo to just exist as I do, to be a queer, tatted up, visibly, visibly queer person. It's like just my existence alone is a testament of like the amount of work that I'm doing to be the one that's breaking these cycles. And it's like being the one that's like, okay, I'll take, the lashes if it means the next person doesn't have to. And it's like it starts with our families. It's like I've had conversations with my mom, with my family about transphobia and homophobia and the different ways that their ideals and attitudes, it's like that's not okay. But their responses is usually like, this is how I was raised. And I'm like, I understand that. And it's like the whole like, oh, this is a Western thing, homosexuality came here with the white folks and all that. But I'm like, okay, your religion came here with the white folks. So it's like all these different things. It's like they came here together. So it's like before colonization and all these other things, it's like we had indigenous traditions and sexualities and genders that existed that like were robbed from us. So it's like as the generations passed on, we gave away a lot of our culture and adopted so many things that weren't innate and weren't like natural to us. So it's like, it's hard going against your family members. You're, sitting in the barbershop, hearing the old heads talking about like, man, fuck that gay shit. And I'm like, my dyke ass is in here like, damn, like they're talking about me right now. Like they'll sit there and yell about, oh, Del Beckham's gay shit. And no. Like all these things where I'm like, I can't even speak up because of who I am. And like in this situation, I'm a masculine centered person, but like in this barbershop, my voice doesn't carry any power. So I have to just sit here and listen to it. So it's up to the people who do have these privileges, who can be like, that's not acceptable. So like having these layers of like, yes, I'm a masculine person, but when it comes to like, depending on the context, it's like my masculinity is either valid or not valid. So it's complicated to try to figure out how you can go against generational traumas and like things that are so, large compared to you being a small person and what I feel like a small person when it comes to certain situations. It's like, I'm not gonna sit in a barbershop and speak up because I'm the one single dyke who's surrounded by like 10 men. And if I know if I start a conversation that's gonna turn heated, that's my safety. So it's like, it's like, like saying what, David said, it's like people who have more privileges, the cis men who can speak up. It's like we need more of those people to be like, we're on the same level. We can go head to head. So, just basically saying that like it's so complicated being like, I have the ability to speak up, but in the context, it depends on who I'm with. If it's with my family, I can speak up and I have no problem going against my mom because that's my mom. But I'm not gonna go against the old head in the barbershop because it's like, that's not my fight.
Can I respond to Magic Dyke? And I just really wanted to say that name also. But the next time, the next time they tell you it's, you know, being gay or whatever, it's not natural. It ain't African. It ain't black. Tell them being colonized ain't natural. You know, that ain't being. That's not natural. You know, living in a country where the prison population is larger than the prison population in China, which has 3 times the population of this country, 1 billion people. That ain't natural. You know, so we're not going to be divided by that nonsense anymore, you know, and I accept your call to speak up, you know, in situations like that, because I never thought about it like that. You know, I'm in a barbershop. I may find it hard to speak up, but, you know, then you got this person, you know, like yourself who might be sitting there and taking it in a whole different way than I'm taking it, you know, because it's more personal to you. And I appreciate that. And I think that that's a real call, you know, for us to speak up and speak truth and when it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, and just like someone that, as like a trans non-binary person, like I got cousins that are Black liberationists, and we get heated conversations, and he's just like, well, this woman had a beard and she wanted me to call her a she, but how can I explain that to my son? And I was just like, well, you know, I'm trans, right? You know, like those are spaces that I occupy, right? How are you going to defend me? And like, we get into this, and like, whenever you're having these conversations, that's a lot of emotional weight. It's a lot to carry on your back to say, hey, let me dismantle all of this that you have. Let me do the emotional labor of unpacking your colonization because you haven't found the time to do it. Let me do your work for you. And so, you know, he's my family, and so he's my favorite cousin for real. And he's gonna be mad that I'm talking out about him, but he won't be too mad. But it's like, you know, it's that calling in, you know, calling out people. Yeah, we do need to call out people. We need to call out people in our families. We need to call out people that are like homophobic and transphobic within the Black community, and then call them in to help them as allies. Because if we create this system where we are, you know, pretty much promoting like tribalism for those that are woke and those that are sleeping, they're still going to be sleeping. And you're just going to be angry that they're sleeping. And so calling them in and waking them up gently sometimes, and but also putting that on those that carry the least amount of trauma of waking them up, carrying it out on the people that have the most privilege to do that. Because I get hurt because that affects me. And so that's why I'm here, and that's why we have cis folk, you know, cis straight folk on this panel to be like, hey, how can you go out to your friends and help educate them? How can you, speaking of Black love, how can you go out and you share the love? And to try, you touched on something really, really, really important, you know, that really is a great segue to this next conversation about the prison industrial complex. You know, that prison industrial complex has had detrimental consequences on Black masculine humans. Even outside of jails, there, you know, Black mass people are viewed as a threat. You could just see someone with a hoodie walking down the street and they get shot. Kids getting shot. And this has a huge, huge impact on the psyche of Black masked humans as we navigate the world. We're being followed in stores or even harsher punishments in the penal system. So when we're looking at that, when we think of young masked humans, what can we do as role models and movement leaders to alleviate this potential trauma on their psyche? And how can we uplift Black masked youth to combat a cyclical pattern of incarceration? Bye, Kat.
I would say by first modeling healthy masculinity. And in order to do that, we really have to work on ourselves. And then secondly, I think we need to call out toxic masculinity when we see it, but also uplift examples of healthy masculinity when we see it in masculine youth. You know, quick story. When I was 15 years old, sophomore in high school, a senior who was on the varsity football team and twice my size challenged me to a fight in the cafeteria. And I turned around and walked away. And that behavior was frowned upon. I got teased, I got bullied, you should have fought, whatever, whatever. There was one kid in my school who was like a, masculine guy, popular, respected guy, who pulled me aside and said, you know what, you good. Don't even worry about it. And that one person out of 500 who told me I did the right thing by walking away from a fight, I remember him 32 years later. And so that meant a lot to me. And when we see, masculine youth, making those choices, we need to uplift them and support them, because it's hard, because there's a whole society, their friends, their family, telling them to be violent and be aggressive and be a man and man up and walk it off. So we really have to model it and praise it when we see it.
Yeah, I say, I think part of the beginning of the question, Max, when you had said, uh, about Black masculinity, they look at Black people. It makes me think about like Mike Brown, right? They look at him being bigger than what he was. Like he was this big giant, right? And they look at Black people that are, bigger than what I am. I'm a little guy, but if Zoom make it seem like I'm a big dude, I take it. But they look at like, bigger African American people to be this very masculine, very tough, very like dogmatic, right? And I think what David said, we got to support those young folks to let them know, like, love that you are who you are. Don't let society tell you that you're going to be this big scary person, but at the same time, don't embrace that too. Just because you're young and you may look more masculine, and people in some ways, like you say, praise it as a sports player, depending on where you fall on that spectrum. But in other cases, try to make you be somebody different because you are a very masculine young person. That also doesn't mean just by size. That can be just your personality, who you is. Don't embrace what stereotypes and the cultures want you to embrace, but how do we, support them at the same time and let them know that love the fact that you are who you are. And if you walk away from that fight and you probably knew you could have kicked his ass anyway, you don't want to do it, because as Black people, we are more loving, right? We are. That's the difference between us and white folks. They have this more dog eat dog type of mentality. Things we see on television isn't, our culture. Our culture is about sharing, loving, and caring. So embracing young people to let them know it's okay. I used to think it was so cliche to say, I love somebody outside of like, my family. When I started, tell friends after I hang up, like, I love you. At first it's a little weird, but it's okay to do, right? It's okay to feel this sense of love and not have to feel like, oh, that's lame, or like that's some gay shit, right? No, like it is okay. And we must, let our young people know that it's okay to be who you are, but also don't confine to what society wants you to be.
Yeah, I'm going to address this question by saying that I was part of with the Black Power Blueprint project that I was a part of. We renovated a fourplex, which will be housing for people getting home from prison, and they'll be able to get home from prison. They'll have housing, which is a big deal. And then we also renovated purchased and need to still renovate a commercial kitchen and bakery cafe. And at this commercial kitchen will be the workforce program so that they can learn culinary skills. Then we also renovated and built a whole outdoor market that will allow vendors to come and sell fresh foods and whatnot. So I'm saying it's not just to brag, but this is the kind of activities that we engage people in directly. And the thing that's significant about this, to address your question, in my opinion, is that these programs are anti-colonial, anti-gentrification economic development programs. They're actually designed not just to build some kind of little program, but help the Black community develop the capacity to contend with the kind of economy and social system that continues to reproduce this behavior, because it's actually necessary for the system to maintain itself. So you can't, just continually, as I keep using this analogy, build it on the plantation or try to solve it on the plantation. We actually engage people into the process of becoming agents of their own liberation, being part of a project to actually fight the conditions that perpetuate that. And the last thing I just want to say is that because otherwise we get locked into this thing where we fight policy by policy by policy, symptom by symptom by symptom. And we have to be aware of the fact that this social system actually creates an economy around people only dealing with symptoms. You know, so people get jobs and social programs and grant money and funding and notoriety dealing with policy by policy, symptom by symptom. We have to do something to get to the root cause, which means that we have to have power of our own lives, and we have to destroy an economy that requires this kind of behavior, these kind of pathologies to be reproduced among oppressed people, among Black people.
Well, y'all have pretty much answered it in ways that I could never, because the work that you do and the positions that you're in, it's like I've learned so much just from listening to this conversation. And I guess my only input would be like when it comes to the role that I play, like on social media, the role that we all play, like as a society, there's a lot of like everything that we have learned is social conditioning. It's just human nature. And the different things that we pay attention to on social media, like World Star Hip Hop and other platforms that are basically rooted in like celebrating Black violence. It's like we give these things views. It's like when, you know, young Black men are fighting or certain things that we just put our attention towards, where there's like, you know, stories where it could be young Black boy, 13-year-old has the highest IQ, and then we'll just bypass that and go share the fight, or, you know, just little things where we might not think of the impact at large. But it's like, for me, as a person who spends a lot of time on social media, I've been being more mindful about what it is that I'm sharing and being more mindful about the content that I'm consuming when it comes to like the impact that it has. It's like, if we keep amplifying the things that continue to perpetuate these stigmas and like associate like Black masculinity with like the thugs and the scary, the hood niggas, like all the things that society is just like, this is what y'all are. You know, it's like if we keep putting our attention there, it's like celebrating the rappers that are doing all this, you know, nonsense and all that on the Shade Room, just taking part of the different things that continue to show the younger generations that this is what is popular. This is what gets you money. This is what's going to get you out here having that notoriety, as opposed to like, you know, Spelman college kid who's just like no followers over here preaching to his like small community with no like same type of attention. So it's like, for me personally, I think when it comes to the younger generation, social media, it's kind of like meeting them where they're at and showing them what is celebrated, what is uplifted, what's expected from us. It's like, if we keep talking about our greatness and keep following pages that celebrate our greatness and our achievements and all the different strides that we're making to better society, it's like, by virtue of how social media works, it's like the likes and the views and the comments will uplift that more. So it's just, that's my simple way of being like, this is a way that we can address future generations who are learning everything from the internet.
Maxie, and if I may, I just want to say in defense of Black men and in defense of, you know, masculine people of color, emasculation is a very real tactic of white supremacy. From castrating slaves, you know, in the pre-Civil War era, to sexual assault and torture of inmates in prison by COs, to, you know, white men calling us boy when we're grown-ass men. That's real. And I think that what happens a lot is when we try to push back against these white supremacist attempts to emasculate us and assert our manhood, we are not surgical because we haven't done the work. And so we turn women and queer folk and trans folk into collateral damage in this battle against white supremacy. And I feel like we really have to do the internal work and learn how we can express our masculinity and assert our manhood, but strike back at white supremacy without hurting other marginalized people. And I think the best way to do that is to listen to other marginalized people and learn from them how we can not cause them harm as we try to, be our authentic selves and not be, it's like Audre Lorde, I think it was Audre Lorde said, you can't tear down the master's house with the master's tools. And I think a lot of, heterosexual, cisgender Black men, we have eternalized a lot of the, patriarchal and homophobic and transphobic elements of white supremacy. And when we fight white supremacy, we're repeating them. And we have to learn from our queer and femme and female siblings how not to do that.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. Just like one more thing on the topic. So I used to be I still am a clothing designer, but I used to be a clothing designer for a company on Cherokee Street. And it was a pretty transitional neighborhood subject to gentrification. And a lot of the kids there, they were from broken homes. Their parents didn't check on them if they went to school. And so, I would let them like clean up the shop, and like make them t-shirts. Because one day one kid came in and was like, my friend got killed. I'm 9 years old. My friend got shot. And I was like constantly trying to be like, okay, you can have a safe space here. You need to clean up. If you want me to help you with your math homework, do whatever I can to make sure that you don't end up as a person that's shooting someone else's son, shooting someone else's kid. And I worked there for 6 years, and I saw them going from like elementary school to junior high. And their interests change. I saw them I would let them put stuff on the TV just so that they would like not be on the streets and hanging out with like 20-year-old kids that were robbing stores. Well, that didn't really work too well. And they were like the lookouts for kids that were like robbing stores. And they would come in, and when they put stuff on TV, it was like videos of people shooting people. Videos of, people be like, yeah, I went to jail 8 times and I went there and learned rhymes and whatever. And like their interest shifted from trying to like make t-shirts or like do something that could like help advance them in life to be that form of masculinity that they saw. Because if their dad was dead, a couple of their kids' dads were dead. And the only representation of masculinity they had were these 19-year-old kids who's also were like in the system since they were 9. And it was like, that's kids in the city of St. Louis. That's kids all over in Black neighborhoods. Like they do not have any positive role models. And it's like, how can we spaces? They didn't make fun of because I wore makeup. They didn't make fun of me because I wore nail polish. They maybe have said something once or twice, but they were like, oh, okay, well, they're giving me t-shirts. Oh, well, they're giving me a safe space. Oh, they're helping me with my math homework. And so, I left that job, and I still wonder, like, now these kids are in high school. If they're in school, and it's like, when we look at the literacy rate of Black kids, it's lower. When we look at the median income of Black families, it's half that. In the city of St. Louis, it's like $22,000 is the average median income for Black families, and $40,000 to $60,000 for white families. And that's why this question, like, I really wanted to like think, like, what can we do? What can we do to make sure that these 9-year-old kids don't become Trayvon Martin? What can we do to make sure that like they want to continue school? How can we, get kids off the streets? How can we hold, if their mom is on drugs because she needs to cope, because her husband is in jail because of the system and she can't take care of the kids, what can we do? How can we step in for this? Because there needs to be a way to do this. And like, I always was that person, be like, oh yeah, well, we can have police reform and talk to the cops and like make sure that we can do things. And like, I had conversations with the police in the area after one of these kids got, sent to juvie. I was like, what are they gonna do? What are these kids gonna do? There's no after school programs. Half the schools in the city of St. Louis shut down. But we still have money for the police. I'm going on a tangent though, so I'm just gonna,
No, I was gonna say I'm gonna jump in there, and I hate to be, and I know I ain't just doing a selfless plug because I am a public servant, but I mean, we need, because our neighborhood is going to take a while for them to change, right? It's not going to happen overnight. But I think, you know, with Simbone, I know he's running for office in the city of St. Louis. We got a mayoral race coming up March the 2nd. We need to make sure we got people at the table that actually can change some of these laws and change some of these policies and laws that are like holding our communities back, right? Like you say, the medium income and like zip code 6106 is 15,000 and 6105 in Clayton, Missouri is like 90,000, right? Life expectancy is a whole 20-year, you know, difference. And that goes from just not having like grocery stores in the neighborhood, not having quality education. Like say city of St. Louis got schools closing like left and right. And I think one way that we can, outside of our activism, because all of us is in activism some type of way, but we need to elect the right people in office that's going to actually care about the Black community and not look at things being equal, but like I said earlier, being on an equitable level. Like we know that certain parts of the city of St. Louis, Central West End, they don't need as much funding as North Side. And to be clear, a lot of areas in South St. Louis, we always like to say North Side, but it's a lot of Black people, one, in South St. Louis, and their neighborhoods just are as bad. I think David down in South St. Louis, he said that, and I think he is too, Maxie. But all that being said is we need to also, you know, we need to make sure we got the right people in office that can help out. Now that's just one, I think, level of it. It's so much stuff because people power go a long way too. But I think electing the right people gonna be a good start. And we got an election coming up, so that was just like a what they call them, like the little ads where you throw them in real quick, and that's it. I'm out.
So, you know, when we look at like the penal system and how like many times Black men are wrongly accused of crimes that they didn't commit. And we saw this with the Central Park 5 case, Emmett Till. You know, when we look at sexual assault within the Black community, we have this dichotomy of, you know, people that are like, no, that's just the white folk lying, because we have a history of a white woman just saying, he touched me, he assaulted me, kill him. But then we got like people like Michael Jackson and Bill Cosby doing shit for years, but no one could speak up because they didn't believe it, because we have that. And so how can we acknowledge both these false accusations and combat the disbelief of sexual assault that does happen within our community? And that's an easy one to solve, you know?
I mean, I don't know if I got the best answer for this one because I think that's a heavy one. But one I say is level of privileges, and even in the Black community, if it's like you said, if it's Bill Cosby or R. Kelly, like, you know, and we don't want to touch that because that's, you know, we like R. Kelly and we don't really want to mute him, right? But if it was somebody in a neighborhood that did the same thing that R. Kelly did, you know, we'll look at them like, oh, they're guilty. No second thought about it. So the privilege in the Black community, like wrong is wrong. And that just need to be, it don't need to be one is better than the other because it's a no Joe that nobody knows compared to somebody who's famous, that got a lot of money, you know, can kind of fight it off with lawyers. But we also still praise them and we still playing R. Kelly, you know, at the cookout and still saying, oh, he made some of them hits that I just can't take away, right? But how do we combat it? I mean, I love to hear from other people's thoughts on that one because I think it's so, yeah, I'm gonna digress and I may jump back in, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that what's important to say first off, when we talk about police, courts, judges, that is what we refer to as the state, right? All of that is a state. And we have to be able to say that the state comes into existence when society is split along haves and have-nots. And those who have as a consequence of taking it from the have-nots. You know, the state is not something that's universal in human society. We live in a whole social system then that emerged through a process of one people living at the expense of another people. So when Representative Aldridge named some of those statistics, incredible statistics, we could go on and on. You know, we could look at the 228 years that it would take for Black families to acquire the amount of wealth white families have. We could look at the fact that we had people trying to invade the Black community recently here in St. Louis with spy planes, that we have spy agencies who take 1,000 acres of property from people in North St. Louis, push out 100 families, and then spend $1.7 billion in the first round of funding on this spy agency that will gentrify North St. Louis. 60% of the city's general budget goes to police. And that's a consequence of the fact that you have a whole world, one community. We in St. Louis, we characterize it as north of Delmore, south of Delmore, that lives at the economic and political expense of another people. So the school closings, that's another example that Rasheen Aldridge just talked about, right? Because all of the money that should be allocated to go to schools in the Black community are being looted and turned over to these real estate speculators who get these tax breaks where they pay little to no taxes for up to 2.5 decades. And then on the north side, they don't build any houses. They don't hardly even develop any houses. They don't create jobs. They buy up all this property to create their own little personal land banks, and then let those properties rot while they use their money and influence to buy off politicians, to pass policies to gentrify North St. Louis. I'm saying this is the context that this happens in. That's what the police represent. They are the first line of defense for this status quo establishment. So I think what we got to do, and I put this on my platform, is that we have to fight for the ability to negate that process. And we do that with Black community control of the police. We also, for the murder of Mike Brown, we utilized a Black people's grand jury. Of course, we don't have the power yet to make the results of that jury law, but the community came together. Members of the Mike Brown's family came, and we actually had a jury. We showed the evidence, and the people got to participate on the jury as part of this process. So we have to fight for, in every way, for our community to have power over the ability to make every kind of decision necessary for the health of our community. So that includes decisions about, contradictions, how to resolve contradictions within the Black community. And it requires us to be able to try to impose a punishment on, the violence that comes from the state and from these real estate speculators who bleed us dry, and what they do to us don't even get defined as a crime. No, there's no law that says what Paul McKee did was a crime. Getting 2,000 properties or so with the help of the city, and then intentionally letting them rot over time so they can drive the Black community out, make a profit when property. That would be if the Black community had its own representation, it had been won to its own political interests, then there would be some law on the books that would make that a crime. So we got to fight for self-determination in every way so we can solve our own contradictions, and we can fight against a system that bleeds us dry every chance it gets.
When it comes to things, you mentioned sexual assault earlier, Maxie, and I have some very complex feelings about that as a Black man who is a anti-sexual assault activist. And when I speak out against rape and sexual assault, I catch hell from all sides. I get, anonymous death threats, the whole shebang. And, if I want to talk about Harvey Weinstein, Black people are all for it. If I want to call out Bill Cosby or R. Kelly, oh, it's different now. And you mentioned intersectional feminism, and that's important in this conversation because for a lot of white women, their feminism is not intersectional at all. And if you're a Black woman raising a Black child, particularly a Black son, part of your feminism is how you're going to be able to raise your Black son when you fear every time he leaves the house that he's going to be killed by the police, or that he's going to be falsely accused of a crime. Khalif Browder got accused of stealing a backpack, and he spent 3 years in Rikers Island. We have these white people who we have on video breaking into the Capitol and stealing Nancy Pelosi's laptop, and they're able to go on vacations in Mexico and be released to the custody of their parents when they're grown. So for me, when it comes to things like sexual assault and intersectional feminism and race work, we have to look at all the power dynamics at play. And that's why I can't, and I'm gonna piss some people off by saying this, but I can't get with the whole believe women thing, because, you know, if a woman accuses a trans person of assaulting them in a bathroom, there might be another agenda there. If a white woman accuses a black person of sexual assault, yeah, maybe he did it, but there could also be a racial agenda there. There was that woman in New York who said that this black boy groped her in a bodega, and the video showed that he barely brushed past her as he walked by. So if we believe all women, believe all women would mean believe in the woman who accused him at Till, like you said earlier. So for me, you have to look in the society where there's so much marginalization and so many different, levels of power and privilege. We have to look at all of them, especially when you cross barriers of race and gender and sexual orientation and gender expression. If R. Kelly had been molesting little white girls, I think that would have been a very different conversation. I think he would have put out a lot fewer albums. But at the same time, you look at someone like Harvey Weinstein, who also got away with what he was doing for decades. So it's not, I think one of the big problems in our society is we like simple solutions to complex problems, and they do not exist. We have to look at these problems in all their complexity, and that's going to take a lot more work than just giving simple solutions and slogans and living our activism according to bumper stickers and phrases that sound nice but don't address all the complexities of these problems.
I personally am just, once again, in the student position, just listening to the different, perspectives and just thought-provoking points that you guys have made. So no input, just here to learn when it comes to certain topics.
I will add, though, that it was, I don't want to say beautiful, but it was gratifying, the fact that Marilyn Manson got canceled within like 24 hours. And it's like, Marilyn Manson was like my David Bowie, my Prince, that representation of non-traditional masculinity that can exist in a world and be successful. And then as I grew older, like seeing the fact that like, oh, maybe he's a toxic person that perpetuates like horrible things. And the fact that like many sexual assault claims came out. And then when Evan Rachel Wood came out and was like, this is this, he got dropped from his label. He got dropped from TV. It was like anyone followed him. And those that continued to follow him were like in question of their ethics. And like, that doesn't happen before, really. Before all this. And like, I am the kind of person that's like, when someone comes out, I will definitely put in that has very much merit. When like a person comes out and says, I have been sexually assaulted by this person, I will question if I should listen to that person ever again, and there are complications, and I don't always really trust the law, because the law does not work for marginalized people often. And so, there's a lot of speculation of what goes on, and like, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to like be like, I wish there was some concrete answer to be like, we know what happened. And even though no one was there, we actually fully know everything. And I wish that there could be like some, omnipotent like intelligence that we can fully know what went on in situations. So like, you can be like, this is what happened. But it's very ambiguous at times. And, it's a very heavy subject. And I'm just gonna move on to the next subject. So, I mean, they're all heavy subjects. Like, really, this has been like a really like beautiful, like deep conversation, and it sucks that we gotta talk about Black trauma, but the way that Black trauma affects the psyche of Black people is important to talk about. to fully love ourselves as Black people, we have to understand the things that are getting in the way for us to love ourselves and for society to love us. And, this is our body. We got warts on it, but that doesn't mean it's not beautiful. We can clip our toenails, but we got to make sure that we maintain this beauty. We got to make sure that we, are loving ourselves in our entirety and combating the things and removing the parts that are holding us back. Because there's a cancer sometimes in this body. And if we don't remove it, we will die. So the Black mask persona has been subjected to a strenuous and dehumanizing perception. This is quite reflective in the work forced upon Black males during slavery. This has instilled the concept that Black masculinity is synonymous with machismoism, and it is a hurdle in discussing the mental health of Black mask humans. So how can we, as a community, uplift those that find solace and comfort in being macho while simultaneously promoting emotional intelligence?
I'll start. As a person who prides themselves in like being part of communities that are just always learning and growing together. Social conditioning is pretty much at the basis of everything. It's like the things that we focus on are what continues to like happen. It's like there's a lot of human behavior experiments and all that can kind of like show us. It's like if this is the trait that is focused on, amplified, uplifted, it's what's going to continue. And when it comes to like, if you want to be macho, I know that looking here where there are healthy masculinity examples, now that I can say that I know people who embody healthy masculinity, it's like having people like y'all in these communities to show that like you can still be a macho man and still embody things that make you emotionally intelligent. Anything that can be learned can also be unlearned if you have the right examples there in that community. So it's like continuing to put the resources in the hands of people who are doing the work and who want to do the work to be better. Like there's no like one example of what it means to be like super healthy masculine person. Like there's no like 100% healthy person when it comes to like our growth, because we're always learning and unlearning. So it's like having people like the people in front of this panel right now in communities and continuing to have examples in place of what it means to be a person who can hold themselves accountable, who can recognize their privileges, who can celebrate their identity and use their privileges to uplift other people, is pretty much how I can, give my short answer of you can still be macho, but being macho is not being violent. You can be macho and still love people, still hug your friends, still, say I love you when you get off the phone talking to the homies. It's like you can still be macho and embody other qualities that are, that cause more love instead of harm.
Yeah. I mean, I got to give you a thank you, Maxie, for like having this platform for us to even have a conversation. 'Cause I think it's, conversations like this that allow people to feel comfortable in their skin and the inside, no matter if they want to still be a macho person, right? And still understand that, like Magic Dyke said, I can be macho, but I don't have to be violent. Like I could be a macho person, but I'm like the sweetest teddy bear. Like inside, I'm just the jokester that just, want to play the game, have a good time, but I still, want to be a macho person. And I think that's and as you look at this panel, you have and J. Marie has left us, but you got all different levels of people that can identify as masculine, right? And I think it's good for how many ever people are watching for them to see, because they all, they may identify with Masimba, they may identify with David or Magic Dyke or myself or J. Marie, right? But all of us being on here saying it is okay as Black people to be a macho person, but to still be intelligent, still be emotional, and not have to have that fear of, oh, I'm less of a person because, again, especially in our community, if you are considered macho, that means you like steel, you tough, like nothing will break you. You don't cry, like that's for punks. Punks cry, like, you know. So being able to have conversations like this, that, and you know, it's unfortunate, like you said also earlier, Maxie, that we have to talk about trauma in a Black community. Like, for us to heal from it, we have to talk about it. And a lot of times we don't like to talk about it. If it wasn't for Ferguson, you know, I would have been like, a lot of the trauma I went through as a kid, even though I'm still young, would just be kind of normal. But that's not normal. It's not normal to not have these type of conversations. And other communities having, that's just them, right? That's not us. So I think this platform and just being able to talk about Black love the day right before Valentine's Day, and what does that really mean, right? And breaking that down, not just relationship goal tweets, but like, what does Black love really mean? So I think, you know, these conversations are helpful for people that still want to identify as a macho person, but still have uh, certain traits that people would expect them not to have because they're so masculine and so strong.
I would say we need to teach and learn and model that masculinity is not one dimensional. We are complicated people. And, you know, there are times when you really need to turn on the macho, but there are times when it's really about finding out when it serves you and when it doesn't. And I tell people all the time, you know, a sledgehammer is not inherently better than a screwdriver and vice versa, but you can't drive screws with a sledgehammer and you can't bust up concrete with, you can't drive screws with a sledgehammer and you can't bust up concrete with a screwdriver. So it's about picking the right tool for the right job. You know, you can be one person when you're talking trash on the basketball court with your homies, and you can be you, but be different when you're relating to your child or your intimate partner or, you know, your elders. And we're complicated people. Some of us choose not to be because we've been taught by society that we have to wear this mask. And so I think that as men and as masculine people, we not only have to practice vulnerability, but we have to be on the lookout to create spaces for the people in our lives, especially our masculine, you know, friends, to also be vulnerable. And when you know that, you know, your homie is suffering, but they're trying to tough it out and just be hard, you know, you can be that person. It's like, yo, bro, you good? You need to talk? You know, it's cool. You know, create those spaces for other people and let them know it's okay, that you don't.
I think you got cut off for that last thing. Can you repeat that last sentence for us?
All right, my computer's acting up again, but basically I was saying that creating spaces for people to be vulnerable and let them know that, you know, this masculine facade that we've been taught to carry, that it's okay to let it down. And it's sometimes it's necessary for our health to let it down, because toxic masculinity is literally killing us. You know, it sometimes it kills other people, but also it kills us in stress and heart attacks and, you know, mental and suicide and mental illness. So creating those spaces for people in your community to be vulnerable and let that mask down.
I don't have anything. I don't want to repeat what I feel like I might repeat what I've said several times. So I just agree with what I've heard so far.
Thank you. Well, this has been an amazing conversation with all of you. I feel like I've learned a lot. There's so much knowledge that has been shared. I'll be saving this. It's on Twitch right now for all those viewers there, but we'll be posting this on YouTube and on Facebook to make sure that everyone can hear this message, because so much has been learned. And like, for all of you, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And I just want to, you know, dedicate the last, you know, maybe 5 minutes for each and one of you, and like, let us know how, as a community, we can support you. How can we, you know, as community members, support you on your road to liberation? How can we help you get to where you need to get?
Okay, I'll go first. Maxie, thank you for having me in this panel, and everyone here. It feels like I've been in like the presence of a lot of great teachers, and it's like I'm forever, a student to the universe. So like this moment was really, really eye-opening in a lot of ways. So I'm grateful for the different ideas and knowledge and perspectives that were shared. I think just to sum up everything that we've talked about, like in order for us to do better, we have to recognize our privileges. Being an AFAB person who is an African immigrant, who English is not my first language, and like I'm just the minority, what is a lottery? It's like I can check off a lot of boxes. And if I can recognize my privileges, and if I can use my voice to empower others in whatever capacity, it's like I know that other people can do the same thing. And it's like calling on the cis men or the allies of whatever capacity. It's like be okay with giving up your power in order to empower others. Like genuinely lift the people that are, that you call community members. And it's like for me personally, like T'Chara said, it's like the fact that, you're taking my call to speak up in the barbershop for me, it's like perfect. It's like it doesn't take much to stand up for our community members. It's like you don't have to be on the podium in the rallies. It starts in our own houses, in our own homes, just literally at the grocery store. If you see something that's out of line, be comfortable speaking up. Like, and the higher up you are on the privilege ladder, the more responsibility you have to use that power. So it's like my call to action is just start where you are. If I can recognize my privilege, I know the next person can do the same. So you have the power to make a difference, but it starts with you, and it literally starts in your own house. Like, don't go off doing performative nonsense just to be like, look at all the things that I'm doing. I helped this one person pay their rent and, clap for me or whatever. Just do the things that you can do for the sake of like the betterment of the community and the well-being of the different people that don't have the same privileges that you do.
That's like if we had the little sound mic drop, like boom, 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 boom. Then they do it again after like they did it. They do it. That was that moment, and I appreciate that, Magic Dyke. Maxie, appreciate the opportunity to be on such a great panel with some old friends and new friends now. Now I feel like we are family. That's one thing I kind of learned from the movement. Is like once you know that you in a space with people on that same mission that you're on, like you officially family. So I guess my call to action or anything that I would say is really want to echo something that Jay Marie said earlier, as far as listening, but being an intentional listener. Is one thing where we say we want to be an ally, and I'm gonna be honest. I'm not always perfect in this realm of masculinity or how to always support our LGBTQIA movement, right? Saying the wrong words or may identify people in the wrong pronoun. How do I always, make sure I be better? I think that's making sure if you really are serious about it. And like Jay Marie said, sometimes people calling you out, you feel like, oh, it's like a call out, like a you ain't shit type thing, but it's coming from a place of love. So I would, that'd be my call to action is for more people to be willing to listen with their ears and like not judge with their mind, but really open up their heart to things that may seem weird, it may seem different than what you're used to. Whatever that is, if it's the Black Lives Matter movement, if it's talking about like LGBTQIA rights, if it's talking about homeless, like, and you just don't know, just being a good listener, I think more people need to do it. I think ways that I can be supported is continuing to, on the state level, is being able to know certain legislation that can actually break down some of these barriers. Not always knowing the ins and outs of everything. Being able to have conversations like this, I feel so much more equipped when I go into Jefferson City, and they're talking about trans individuals, or they're talking about, or even my colleagues being masculine in a way and thinking it's okay as a legislator to be so masculine and rude to the women in our body, right? So, these conversations are helpful, but also without knowing everything, consider y'all not allies family if there's legislation that I always can file to break down some of these barriers. Some of these things can't be done by law. It's personal within yourself that you have to change, within our communities we have to change. But if it's legislation from the state that we can change, ain't in this position forever. And I want to, get rid of as many systematic racist policies that are holding people back from being treated equal. So equitable, I should say. So thank you for this, Maxie.
I would say that for a lot of us who have a lot of privilege and want to be allies, but we don't know how, we don't know where to start, we're afraid of doing the wrong thing and saying the wrong thing. I just say you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are organizations on the ground who are doing the work and have been doing the work that don't get enough funding, that don't have enough volunteers, that don't have enough bodies. And you can support them, and simply by going to meetings and going to events and being in the room, you can learn how to be a better ally and how to be respectful of marginalized people. Jay Marie started the Moho Justice Coalition to advocate for sex workers, and Maxie, I know you're a part of that. There's, Planned Parenthood and NARAL, which Maxie and I both work with. There's Organization for Black Struggle, which I know Rasheen has worked with. So I think an easy way, you can, we all Google, how to do this and how to do that, and we're afraid we're going to get it wrong. But I think the best way is to get involved and support the organizations and to find mentorship among the people that are already doing the work. So if you want to support me, you can support the organizations that I support.
Yeah, I want to echo, the thank you. I appreciate a lot being a part of this, and I'm definitely learning. And this is an area that stretches me, beyond my comfort zone, and educates me. And I'm very, very happy to be a part of this, and to be able to get on the right side of the question, be on the right side of the question. And I think that there's a quote, one quote I want to leave with, a couple things, but one that says that sometimes our positions are unpopular in the short term, even among the masses, only to be vindicated as events unfold to reveal a truth that was obscured by the faulty analysis of the prevailing common perception. On such occasions, we must move in opposition to the direction the masses are attempting to go. Otherwise, what is the meaning of leadership? That's by Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And I see that's one of the clarion calls today, is that we have to lead, and my organization has done that. We lost a whole branch in France. We're an international organization. We lost a whole branch of our movement in France because we stood up for, LGBTQIA. We stood up for that. And we did it. We've been doing it for a very, very long time. And the person who is running kind of alongside, along with me, she's running for alderperson in Ward 3. Her daughter, Kalama Bentham. She is same gender loving, and she's an international president of an international organization in our movement. And so I think that we have to take serious, our unity with the right of people to express themselves however they feel in that way, and that's demonstrated by getting out of the way and allowing people to lead, and so that's one thing. The other thing is that I think is a takeaway for me is that we have to push the system, and we have to go beyond simply addressing symptoms. We can fight symptoms all day, we can fight policies all day, but we got to get to the core contradiction. And I love this quote by Mao Zedong. He says, the cardinal responsibility of leadership is to identify the core contradiction in the historical process and work out a political line to resolve that. And for that core contradiction that we are looking at when we talk about the treatment that the system imposes on us based upon our gender preferences or whatever, how we learn to carry that out among ourselves, we're dealing with a system referred to as colonialism or colonial capitalism. That's when a foreign and hostile power lives at the expense of a whole people. So North St. Louis, when we see the disparity in wealth north and south of Delmar, that's a consequence of our resources constantly being looted in 1,000 different ways to go to real estate speculators and corporations and the bureaucracy down in City Hall. We see the spy planes and the spy agencies and school closings, police violence, all of the city's general budget going to police. That's to maintain a fundamental relationship with the Black community has, one community, the white community, can live at the expense of Black people. So that's the thing that we have to be able to fight. We have to be a free and independent people. We got to push the system to go beyond merely addressing symptoms or policy by policy. We got to be able to call for things like reparations, which raises the whole question of the looting of the Black community for the sake of, the white community, and Black community control of schools. We got to say that the LRA has to return property to the people, but push the system and win the people, bring the people into the process so we can have control of our own lives. And that's the only way we can create the kind of world that we want to live in. Otherwise, we'll be on a plantation fighting to overturn these contradictions for another 400 years.
Wow, thank you all so much for being a part of this. This is part of a monthly series that we do at Qu'art, focusing on issues for queer liberation, because liberation is a thing that we have to keep on doing. And there's so many different facets of the queer community. There's so many facets of, liberation. And so as we continue each month, we'll be talking about different topics to make sure that we can connect and educate our audiences to be diligent and fight, regressive policy, fight the toxicity of neoliberalism, fight the toxicity of conservatism, fight capitalism, and fight for our people, because we'll keep fighting until we're free. And on that note, thank you very much. And it was a joy to have you all.
Thank you, Maxie. I see the work you do in the community, and I appreciate you, fam, for real.
Likewise.
A third that.
Meet everybody else too. Well, I've met Rasheen before, I believe, but yeah. I hope I got some new friends, some new contacts.
Yeah. Are we still live?